Alrighty. So I'm now on my permanent site. I've been here about 6 days. So I figured I would make a little video kind of about all the pre-service training as a whole so I could kind of reflect on it before I had forgotten a lot of the details. So we actually got to country on June 5th. Oh, I've got my little schedule of our training here in front of me. We got to country on the 5th of June. After leaving the States on the 3rd, we had a full, basically like 36 hours and some change of traveling. Um, and so then the first 5 days, there's something called orientation. So we were all together, all 49 of us who came to, who came to Peace Corps, Moldova. We all met up at a hotel, and we kind of spent the next 5 days at this hotel. Peace Corps took us right there. So we kind of spent that time. We started our language training. We met all the Peace Corps staff. We talked to each other quite a bit. Yeah, it was pretty entertaining. It was a good time, but I was excited to move. On that Sunday, we moved to our pre-service training host families, which was really stressful for some people. There were some tears and some whatnot, but I was pretty stoked to get to my host family because I was living in a bedroom with four dudes in there, so I was ready to move on. We were pretty cramped. So after orientation ends, that next week is when PST pre-service training actually starts. And the whole bread and butter pre-service training is kind of the first 6 weeks. So we spent those 6 weeks with a pretty similar schedule, so I'll kind of run through that. So Monday through Wednesday, we would go to the school, we'd have 4 hours of language training, and then we'd have a lunch break. I'm in the health project, so after lunch, all the volunteers in the health project would get together. So in our village, there were 7 of us, but also in the next village over, there were 8 volunteers there. So those 8 would travel to our village, and then after lunch, we would have about 4 hours of tech training, which is where we learned about teaching and learned about the curriculum, about the health curriculum that we were going to be teaching. After that, we would go home, would be already like 5:36 by the time we got home, and then it was just time to eat dinner, unwind a little bit, and go to bed and repeat. So not much time on those days. That's a standard day. Thursdays were something called hub sites, which is where all the volunteers, all 49 of us, we got together in our rayon. So that was a really exciting day for me. It was kind of my personal favorite day of the week. So even though it was a longer day, we'd leave our village at 7. We wouldn't get back till 6:30 at night. It was really nice to kind of catch up with all the other volunteers and see what was going on outside of your own little bubble. Fridays were exactly the same as Monday through Wednesday, so language in the morning, tech in the afternoon. And then Saturdays we'd have language in the morning for 4 hours, and then usually we'd be done after that, so we'd have a half day on Saturdays. And then Sundays were just kind of days to relax and recover. In my case, I explore a lot in Chisinau on Sundays because there wasn't much else to do. The best thing to do would have been on Sundays would be do laundry and chores and stuff, but the families here, most of them are super religious, which is not very American, but it's part of the adjustment. And they wouldn't let you do laundry or anything like that on Sundays, so just try to fit in. So that's why I always got to dodge. Yeah, so basically the first 2 weeks, there's no changes to that schedule at all. After the second week, we visited a bunch of monasteries. We have all the volunteers got together. We rented out a bunch of route areas, and I guess every year, every class does that. So we saw 3 monasteries. I mean, they're nice, big, and impressive, but there's really not that much to see at a monastery. If you've seen one monastery, you've kind of seen them all, kind of thing. But still some cool history behind them. The next week, we visited the Peace Corps office. So that would have been week 3. So our training instructors took us all into the capital, Chisinau, and we met up with our well, we met up with all the volunteers at the Peace Corps office, so we kind of saw where all the staff sits and all that, the facilities that are available for us to use in our free time. Um, the next week, week 4, is the probably the most exciting week because it's site announcement, where everyone finds out where they're actually going to be living and working for the next 2 years. And then right after that, like the next day or two, we went to our sites and we spent a long weekend. It was about 3 days in our site, meeting our partner teachers who we're going to be working with and our host families. And in my case, it was a different host family, but if you're not too happy with your living situation for certain reasons, they'll move you. They'll try to find alternate places for you. So after coming back from that, week 5 was the same old, 4 days a week of language and tech, and then one hub site. And then in week 6, for us being health educators, it was our first week of teaching in Romanian, which was quite a thing. It was the first time kind of like teaching off of a script with no freestyling whatsoever. So that was a interesting experience. But then it was nothing compared to the bread and butter of PST, which is weeks 7 and 8, which is something called practice school. It was by far the hardest part of pre-service training is week 7 and 8. I saw more tears in that week than I could even count. It's just really frustrating trying to go through this curriculum with your partner teacher and still not really being able to communicate very well, but having to produce a product and having to put that product on full display, which is of course your lesson, and then teaching it all week. Yeah, it was really stressful for basically everyone. I think everyone had a tough time with that. So after that, week 7 and 8, that's pretty much the climax for health educators. English educators had a very similar thing, but the main difference is English educators have a partner who they're going to be working with, or two partners at least, who speak English to some degree, and they actually teach in English, which is a huge, that's really clutch because they can actually communicate in a way that's not frustrating to them. We don't have that as health educators. We're kind of thrown out to the dogs right away. But after that, it's just kind of smooth sailing. Week 9 is exactly the same as any other week besides 7 and 8. So it's just, and by that point, Peace Corps staff is just kind of done with having you around all the time. So we just had a few mornings of classes, and then our last hub site, which was a pretty cool time. And then after that, week 10 was just packing. So we packed up, spent a lot of last time with our host families. It was my birthday, so we had a good party in our town. And then a couple days later, the night before my actual birthday, my host family threw a surprise birthday party for me, which is really awesome. And they invited volunteers from other towns and stuff, and we were just all together. And yeah, so that was it. After that, we moved out to our permanent site, and now I've been here. Pre-service training as a whole wasn't that hard or difficult. The only difficult thing is learning the language, and also being kind of like your liberty really being restricted can be difficult. I was in the military, so it was nothing difficult for me, nothing that I wasn't familiar with. But so now we're in site prison, which is where we're not really supposed to leave our site for like the next 3 months, with a few exceptions. But so now it's just a game of trying to fit in with my host family, and yeah, try not to make an idiot of myself doing anything too stupid. School starts in a couple weeks, so yeah, I'll do more videos as I think about it. But I just wanted to kind of log this while it's still fresh in my mind.